How many episodes of Doctor Who have we had now since it started back in 1963? Quite a few.
A lot, yeah.
But how many of them could we have had if certain other stories had been made?
I know. And some of them are annoying that they weren't made.
Some of them are very interesting ideas. Others sound like complete drivel. But that's what we're going to do today here on Time Space Visual, and we're going to take a look at that. But first, very importantly, over to Tom with some space buns and tea.
Yes, thank you. So, first one is from Simon L. Back from the Silver Nemesis review and the shambles that episode was. He says that it was this episode where it was revealed that the Doctor has a secret that he will take to the grave, which is later played out in the Russell T Davies and Moffat eras of Who, especially with the name of the Doctor and stuff. Brilliant. It's kind of a nice little touchback to the classics. He goes on to say they clearly expanded on this Sylvester reveal. This episode was also the start of and hint through this secret that he is a godlike character. That's what they were going to do with the Doctor's character if it was not cancelled.
Yeah, I think, like we said before, it would have been quite interesting to see how it would have panned out. Whether or not we'd have agreed with it is a bit different, but it definitely would have been a bit of a... I think looking back on it now, knowing that we didn't get anything, I think it's a part of, if only it had carried on. But
yeah, I mean, it was starting to take a much darker turn around then, so it's quite plausible that he could have fallen into this Doctor Victorious role a lot earlier on, which we do see in Waters of Mars with David Tennant.
Yeah, I think McCoy suits that Doctor with a slight darker edge to him as well, because if you look at season 24, it's very camp, it's very silly, but you get into his later stuff and it's tonally it's much different, and I think it's all the better for it, to be honest. I'd just love to have seen where it goes.
Yeah, it is a shame it got cancelled when it did, but we're happy that they brought it back in 2005, so we can't complain. The next one is from Odin One Eye, friend of the channel. Matthew. I'd definitely be down with you two doing deep dives on specific monsters and aliens throughout Doctor Who, like talking about how they've changed and evolved in the universe and from a production sign.
Oh.
So, yeah, I'm down with that. There's quite a few.
To be fair.
There's quite a few we could do on that. I mean, there's the obvious Cybermen, Daleks. I know they've been done to death online, but we can touch on other monsters.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely take a look at all of them. There's some, there's interesting stuff behind the scenes things. Maybe that's something we could always do on a live stream.
Yeah.
Because we're going to do one of those
eventually.
When we get around to it when we've got time.
Yeah.
And once we've learned how to go through a video without irritating cuts because one of us has forgotten how to speak English, which happens more than you might think, to be honest with you.
It does happen a lot.
But anyway, we're going to go over now and make another...
Speaking of the devil.
I was going to say make another cut as well. How ironic is that? As we said before, today is all about the unmade episodes of Doctor Who. So, Tom, we've always both done a bit of research. Actually, picked out a couple that sort of stand out to us. So, what is your first pick for these ones that you'd like to see?
So, my first pick, I've got two from the Third Doctor's era. This was going to take part during season 9. It's the Daleks in London. So it was commissioned on the 25th of May 1971 and was going to be the final story to that season in 1972, reintroducing the Daleks after their 5-year hiatus. Little is known about how the storyline was going to pull out. It was going to be 6 parts.
Can I take a guess? They'd be set in London. And there would be some Daleks.
I'd imagine, and the Doctor, of course. It was Robert Sloman serial as well. So
it was a combination of everybody.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Other than the fact that it would have had some similarities to the Dalek invasion of Earth, except set in contemporary London, the similarity caused the production team some concern. And producer Barry Letts eventually decided he'd rather start the season with a Dalek adventure instead of ending it with one, which is why. It was
Day of the Daleks, right?
Done. Day of the Daleks was rewritten into Day of the Daleks actually, and the Time Monster was then written and commissioned to replace the original series finale.
I wonder what could have been with that. Would it have been the peace conference like you get in Day of the Daleks, and it's the Daleks travelling back in time to stop it, maybe, or will we still have had the gorillas and the Ogrons? I don't know. It's quite an interesting one to think about, really.
Yeah. I'm not too sure how it would have planned out. I think if it was very similar to Dalek Invasion of Earth, people would scorn it for that, because that was such a good serial.
You've got to remember that at the time there was no repeats or videos or anything, so it would only sort of been in the backs of people's memories. Was a thing that happened. But I don't know, I think it's definitely one that would have been quite interesting to see for sure. And I just wonder how far the similarities would go, in terms of, I know this obviously set in contemporary London is a bit different, but would it be a dark occupation? Would it be an attempted invasion? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if they did come to reprise some of these, it would be interesting to see how they turn out. Like, the ideas are there, it's just going to be a matter of writing a new script and seeing where they go with it. But
I believe you have another Pertwee pick as well.
I do. So this one is the end of Pertwee's time as a Doctor. Gonna take over. It was supposed to go in place of Planet of the Spiders. It's called The Final Game.
I think this is probably the most famous out of all of the unmade stories, apart from maybe the original Trial of the Time Lord series.
Yeah, I did see that. I was tempted to put that in, but I like my last pick better, personally. So this was going to be, as I said, the third Doctor's final story. Again, Robert Sloman and Barry Letts as an uncredited co-writer. It was commissioned 15th February 1973, and the story was to end with the reveal that the Master and the Doctor were brothers, or two different opposing aspects of the same being, like the ego or the id, if you've studied psychology.
I have no idea.
And the Master dying in a manner which suggested that he sacrificed himself to save the Doctor's life. It could have been a really good story.
Yeah, I think it would have been one of those ones that would have been, up there as the most memorable of Pertwee's era for sure. I don't know how I feel about the whole Doctor and the Master being brothers thing. I get that the opposing sides of the same being and stuff, but and that's very sort of Barry Letts, Buddhist kind of mantras that he would then turn into Planet of the Spiders. But I think the idea of them being, oh, what's up, bro, would just be a bit like, I don't know.
It would have depended on how they'd done it. They could have made quite a good psychological thriller out of this.
I think it would be nice to see his Master redeemed and them sort of make up, and hug it out. But
yeah, but then they kind of redeemed the Master with Missy, and I feel like how long the Master was nuts and crazy.
It takes a bit longer though.
It does take a bit longer, but I feel like you got a lot more of nuts, crazy Master, like hell bent on killing everyone, and then I feel like the turnaround in the Master's behaviour in life is a bit more heartwarming and a bit more felt. Yeah. That way round. But then obviously we didn't have this story, so we won't know, unfortunately. And there was no way we'd ever know. Unfortunately, Roger Delgado, who was playing the Master at the time, was killed in a car accident in Turkey on the 18th of June in 1973, which forced the story to be scrapped. Because they didn't want to recast the Master at that time.
Yeah, it was way too soon to do at that point. I think, I think that Roger Delgado's death had a lasting impact on the show. It was the thing that sort of convinced John Pertwee to really move on. It scrapped up plans that had an effect on all of them, as it would, obviously. But at that point, it would have been way too early to recast the Master. And I think story-wise, been quite. I know that there is a fan-made audio version of it knocking about on YouTube, which I haven't had a chance to listen to yet, but I've heard very good things about it. So maybe that's one way of experiencing that, because I know it definitely, I think there was, whether it was scripted or not, I know they definitely storylined it for sure.
Yeah, they did make one to preserve the story's legacy and give it a new life.
Yeah.
Which is nice, and I think if they can keep it as close to Delgado's Master as possible, I think that would be a really nice sort of touch.
Yeah, and I think like we said, it's a good way of just an alternative ending to that era, giving Roger Delgado a bit of a send-off, because obviously that was like his appearance in Frontier in Space was never planned to be his last appearance and all that. That's how it ended up, and it's a shame because obviously there was nothing to be done about it, but as it goes, it's not the most lasting impression in that story. But basically runs off because the Daleks turn up, and it's a shame that we never got to have that closure.
Yeah,
and it's a shame because Roger Delgado is a damn good actor as well.
He was
not just
incredible.
In terms of Doctor Who, but he's just good in everything.
Yeah.
So
he is a great talent lost, unfortunately, and too soon.
Very much so.
Which moves us on, though, to you.
Me, I have picked a Fifth Doctor unmade story. This was a story called, with a working title of The Elite. And essentially the story revolves... It was originally going to be set in Peter Davison's first series, so Adric Nissa Tegan. And it was written by Barbara Clegg, who would go on to write Enlightenment, which is one of my favourite stories of Doctor Who ever. It's so underrated, and people just need to wake up and realise how brilliant it actually is. But I think it's another one. Basically, the outline for this, I'm not going to say spoilers because it was never made, but the idea was that it's a group of kids that were being controlled by this elite alien figure, using their knowledge, and it would have been revealed halfway through that it's actually a Dalek mutant. And it would have been sort of the first time Classic Who really does something different with the Daleks in a while. I think it really would have played into... Barbara Clegg gets the whole thing with the Doctor being a bit more upper class, like the Fifth Doctor especially being a bit more upper class. And I think, like we said with Enlightenment, that he doesn't struggle like he does quite a lot in his era with, being recognised as a figure of authority. He walks into Enlightenment and he's quite almost equal to the Eternals in terms of the class structure. So I think that would have been quite an interesting way of seeing this in another story as well.
Yeah.
I think, obviously, when you've got this TARDIS team, you've got, Adric and Nyssa, both very intelligent, very young companions. Would they have had something to do with the whole plot of it? I know this was adapted later on by Big Finish into a lost story, but they sort of aged it forward a bit, so it's after Adric's died. It's in season 2. It's just after Tegan returns. And I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, but it's supposed to be very good. But yeah, I think it just would have been quite interesting to see them do something different with the Daleks. It's not just a case of Daleks turn up, everyone gets killed. It's something, it's picking apart the Daleks a bit more on a character level rather than just a sort of, they're the bad guys, we're the good guys,
yeah,
bam, bam, bam.
Giving a bit of development to the character as a whole, innit?
Yeah.
It's always, like, with the Dalek stories, you throw them in there because you know they're going to be a draw. And that's partially how the revival happened. They knew we were going to get that. We knew Daleks were coming back.
Yeah.
And that was a big draw. They put it mid-season. Very nice touch.
And especially with this story as well, it wouldn't just be a typical, part one cliffhanger is the Daleks turning up, even though the story is usually called the something of the Daleks.
Yeah.
It would have been quite a nice surprise, sort of similar to Earthshock in terms of like, well, we genuinely didn't expect these guys to be back.
Yeah. And like you struggle to find new ideas to do with the Daleks because so many, and same with Cybermen, they rely so much on the fact that they are such a popular villain.
Yeah, I think it takes quite talented writers to really sort of pick apart what they are or do something new with them. And that's one thing I did say about Chibnall, to be fair, was that he did manage to do something a little bit different with the Daleks and with the Cybermen.
Yeah, and for what they were, I did enjoy the episodes, except for Eve of the Daleks. That's just we don't go there. But like the Cyberman stories, Ascension of the Cybermen, I really liked. I thought it was a very good story.
Yeah.
But it's just finding that something different to do with them, because you can't just keep rehashing the same story. Major villain returns, wants to kill everyone, live on its own as the master race, or upgrade everyone. It's very much rehashing the same old story, just with a fresher look for the villain, I think, half the time.
And I think with it, like you said, the focus is the fact that as long as you've got a setting somewhere that you can stick the Daleks or Cybermen or whatever in, that's great. And sure, they can be entertaining, and sometimes they can be really stellar. Look at something like Dalek, that is great. But in terms of, it is a very much just a base under siege. There's a Dalek going around trying to kill people, and the other people have got to stop it. It's nothing groundbreaking in terms of like the Daleks as a species, other than the fact that it's the last one left, supposedly. But whereas this story, I think, really would have picked apart a Dalek. Like, why does it need these intelligent kids for? What's that all about? What would it have been like when the Doctor uncovered it? Why is it posing as something else when a Dalek could quite easily take it away? Why is it out of its shell? All of that stuff. I think that would have been a very interesting idea. No,
I agree. So that leads me on to my Fifth Doctor pick.
Oh, we're batching here.
Yeah, we are. I've gone... So you went with the Dalek story, yeah?
I did, yeah.
I've gone Cybermen. Specifically, Genesis of the Cybermen. So... This whole story, written by Jerry...
If you're thinking about Spare Parts, forget it, because this is completely different.
Spare Parts is based off this story, though.
Yeah, just very loosely.
But so it was written by Jerry Davis. It's going to be a 4-part story. It was submitted around February 1982.
So it would have been the first series as well, and Davison's first one, season 19.
It would have had the Doctor arriving on Mondas. At the point where the Cybermen are being created, with a new companion, Felicity. It was just thrown in there. It wasn't based around it was just based around a companion, which is Felicity. But they arrive on Mondas, which is the twin planet of Earth, on the other side of the sun. And while the Doctor's working on the TARDIS, Felicity encounters the gentle Prince Sylvan, and he accidentally just messes everything up.
Why is he gentle?
I don't know. I don't really want to find out. To be honest, I'm quite concerned. It's 80s TV for Christ's sake. So yeah, the Doctor and this Felicity arrive on Mondas, meet Sylvan, and Sylvan messes up, accidentally activates a TARDIS and sends it 50 years into the future, where his, I believe, evil brother, if I am right, his brother Dega is now king. So he's using the Doctor's device to begin turning people into Cybermen. He's constructed a space fleet in which he was going to use to travel to Earth, invade, convert people. He's going to kill those who didn't want to be converted with cyanide gas as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, lovely bloke.
Nice.
Definitely invite him round for dinner. And yeah, unconverted Mondasians with cyanide gas, I should say. He just wanted to kill everyone on Earth. So Felicity goes on to appeal to the king's partially cybernized wife. We saw enough
You'd
of
enjoy
that,
wouldn't you, Matthew?
She shoots her husband dead, only to be killed by Dega's chief of staff, Krail, in confusion. And then Sylvan and a band of rebels flee in the spaceships to Earth. The massive concussion of the takeoff knocks Mondas out of orbit into deep space, and this was supposed to be the prequel to the 10th Planet, which we see in season 3 as William Hartnell regenerates. So this was supposed to prelude that, leading up to events in that, which I think could have been quite a good story.
I think definitely having, the Cybermen from the 10th Planet in that one would have been quite interesting. I think the knocking Mondas out of orbit because the spaceship takes off is a bit... How light's your planet?
Yeah, it's a bit... how hefty are the spaceships?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's an interesting aspect. Like, you understand... You get that bit of knowledge of how Mondas ended up where it is in the first place.
Yeah.
Which is nice, because when they show up in the 10th Planet, it's like, our planet's been knocked out of orbit. We're coming here to kill you all so we can take yours.
Yeah, get used to it, basically.
Yeah. But unfortunately, this was scrapped because the producer John Nathan Turner and script editor Anthony Root were ultimately not bothered by this. They didn't want to go with it.
I can't say it's something that would appeal to me either, to be fair, massively. I think if you're going to do Origin of the Cybermen, you've got to do it. I think if you're doing like a sort of like princess and a gentle prince and the king and all that and half converted cyberwives, what are you doing? Just do Spare Parts did it brilliantly. I mean, at the end of the day,
the right thing they did was get rid of Felicity and add Nyssa.
Yeah, well, that's just where they were set at the time. I think if don't bother. I think, especially with Spare Parts as well, because it's set after Earthshock. The sight of the Cybermen to Nyssa and the Doctor is really hard hitting. And they've done it again quite recently with this story in the Fifth Doctor stuff with Big Finish, where the Fifth Doctor's pulled around his time stream and he goes, he is there before Adric's died, goes forward into his time stream when Adric's not there with Nyssa and Tegan, and they're like, we've got some bad news, by the way. And then they go back to Telos, and it's another sequel to Team Set. But I don't know, I think a prequel to 10th Planet would have been interesting. I wouldn't have necessarily done that. I wouldn't have taken it in that direction myself.
No, I'd have probably gone a bit darker.
Yeah.
Personally, have the planet, like something drastic hit the planet that knocks it out of orbit.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you've got to do Cybermen stuff quite dark if you're going to do the origin story.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Not exactly fun and bubbly way of, this is nice.
No, they could have gone a very dark way with it.
I mean, could you imagine Genesis of the Daleks, right? But Davros is a gentle prince, and there's they're converting things. What a load of nonsense that would have been.
No, it's a shame they went down the route they did with that one. I'd still love to have seen it personally. I love a good origin story. Whether that would be the best origin story, I don't know, because the origin story we got in... I mean, I know it's comparing New Who to Classic Who, but the origin story we got in Season 2 of New Who with Rise of the Cybermen was...
That's very sort of Cybermen by numbers, kind of like, they're doing, I think quite, it's like we said, we'll do a video on the Cybermen, I think.
Yeah, we'll have to.
Doing an, parallel evolution idea of this is how they started on an opposite Earth, where it's just gradual replacements until the lunatics take over the asylum. But yeah.
Just getting rid of the undesirables in society, basically. No one's going to miss them. That leads us to your final pick.
Yeah, I went and picked one from the new series because there's a few interesting ideas there, and I think I picked out what could have possibly been one of the worst episodes of Doctor Who ever made if it ever had come to fruition.
Go on.
So there's not a name for this, but basically this would have been what Boomtown, that slot just before the finale of the first series. So it's Ninth Doctor, Rose and Jack. It was intended to be written by Paul Abbott. Yeah, this was so obviously Paul Abbott is best known to people in the UK for writing Shameless, the UK the better version of Shameless. No Offence, a few other bits and pieces. So I think he does characters very well. And I think there would have been some great dialogue. I'm not saying this would have been like Doctor Who does Shameless, because that's like a whole other... Oh, God, imagine that.
Yeah, no, I'd rather not.
But the plot for this would have been that Jack, now that he's on board the TARDIS, Rose starts to feel a bit more, like, oh, I'm not his favourite anymore. And then Jack discovers that the Doctor had actually created Rose and groomed her to be the perfect companion.
Yeah.
And it would have been set in Pompeii on Volcano Day and all that, which was obviously used later on. But I think what a weird suggestion, and the fact that they were all ready to go with it. The only reason they didn't was because he was busy doing Shameless at the time and didn't have a chance to write for Doctor Who as well. But can you imagine that, right? You've come out of Empty Child, Doctor Dance and everything. And it's like, oh, the Doctor's not my favourite anymore. And then Jack's like, oh, well, it sucks to be you because he actually created you to be the perfect companion. Like, why? Why would he do that? It's completely out of character for the Ninth Doctor. Like, why? He's travelling alone. So why all of a sudden would he go to the effort? I'm going to sort of groom the timelines, everything, make Rose my perfect companion. And if you were going to make a perfect companion, tell me why she would be hanging from a barrage balloon in the previous story. Yeah.
No, it's very much Torchwood-esque Cyberwoman stuff again.
It's just not even that. It's just like... it just sounds like a fan fiction pitch. Like, it sounds like someone that is... Obviously, Paul Abbott has gone on record saying he's quite a fan of Doctor Who. And I think... I would love to see him write for it, because his stuff, I'm a big fan of Shameless. I really enjoyed No Offence. He can do very solid shows, and No Offence in particular has that sort of comic twang to it, but it is very much grounded in reality police show. And I think I'd have loved to see him tackle Doctor Who, just not like that.
No, that definitely isn't the way to do it, because you've had all that time in the TARDIS with Rose and the Doctor. You know their dynamic very well by this point. You've seen the Doctor going through some of the darker episodes as well. You see a very dark side of him in Dalek. You see that he's brought Rose along and he promises Jackie that he's going to keep her safe. And why would you make a companion, dump her off with some humans and brainwash the humans into thinking that she's their legitimate child and let her live that life and stuff? It opens too many cans of worms.
It's not even... I don't even think why the Doctor would... It's not even like a Doctor... Not even the Master would do that. It's just pointless. It has no... The Rani, maybe. She might have a crack at it, sort of.
Yeah, but we don't need to talk about the Rani.
Just because the story's rubbish. Kate O'Mara was great. But
I agree.
I don't know. It's just so... I remember reading it and I was thinking, what, they were actually good... And like I said, the only reason they didn't do it is because Paul Abbott was too busy. Like, if he was not doing Shameless at the same time, that would have been made. And I think that would have been like... And imagine... It would have stuck out like a sore thumb. It makes the long game look like The Empty Child, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it would have been terrible. I just don't see it. Maybe... I mean, we'll never know exactly, because we'll never get to see it or read any scripts or anything, because didn't even get as far as the script writing. But I just don't buy it.
No, nor me. And... Boomtown I really enjoy. I feel it brought a bit more justice back to the Slitheen.
Yeah, and that was only written as like a hasty replacement for this episode.
Yeah, and I think it was great. It was a really good episode. You had your brilliant comical moments. You had the really dark elements. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed the episode. I rewatched it quite a bit. And to think we might not have got that is kind of like, well, it wouldn't do the Doctor really that much justice.
Yeah, and I think it would take away from the finale as well.
Oh, heavily.
And I think because the whole point of the Doctor and the Doctor and the Rose, the Doctor and Rose both learn from each other. It's not just she's learning from him; he's learning from her. He's learning how to see the universe again. He's learning to not be. He's learning to sort of get over the Time War and move on from it, and see this again.
Yeah,
which all leads up to the regeneration into the 10th Doctor. And I don't know. I think having that weird side plot of Rose, not vibing with it.
No, I think that's well and truly belonging in the trash.
Yeah.
That idea, and I'm glad it never got written. I mean, you never know. If it got made, it could have surprised us.
Maybe. I think we are, like, in the other day, we are just judging this off a synopsis, but sometimes that's all you need. I think I would love to see Paul Abbott genuinely. I think if, that's good. That could be a video for another time. Actually, talk about people we'd love to come and see work on the show, whether it be writers, directors, whatever. Oh, that. Stay tuned for that.
Michael Bay.
Everything's just orange and blue,
and everything blows up.
Yeah.
No. If you want to see that video, let us know.
Yeah. But most importantly, tell us what unmade stories you've heard of that you'd like to see. Do you agree with our ideas? I'm sad like Watch Mojo now, aren't I?
Yeah.
But anyway, let us know. Please like, share, and subscribe this video. We are still hopefully going to get towards those 100 subscribers by the end of April for the...
Yes, I'm itching for this blooming song.
Yeah, he's really itching to do it. So, how can you say no to that face? Like, come on.